Okay, welcome everyone to another episode of the HashiCorp Ambassador Thought Leader Series. We've got our most esteemed community members, experts, and other wonderful frontline practitioners and the like here to talk to us about big ideas and in our knowledge space and hopefully impart some of that wisdom and skill upon us. So everything infrastructure, networking, security, and applications, techniques, principles, and lessons learned that hopefully you, the audience, can take use and make use of. We really want your participation every time you have questions, comments, thoughts, even if it's later in the future when this recording comes out later. Please feel free to contribute. Just make sure that you follow our community guidelines, be inclusive, friendly, patient, cooperative, all of the normal things that you would do probably in a professional setting. And if those confuse you, please check out the URL. The next thing up is whether you're watching this right now or later. This is going to be recorded and put up on our YouTube channels and the other assets that we have available at HashiCorp. So you'll be able to catch it later if you're not able to stay for the first thing. But I have a guest here with me today, and I would like him to introduce himself if he's ready.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you, Cole. Actually, so I am pleasure to be part of the HashiCorp Thought Leadership Series, and I'm looking forward to sharing my knowledge, whatever I'm coming across. So, hey everyone, this is Saravanan. I'm the founder and CEO of a technology company called Cloud Engine Labs. It is a tech startup which helps startup organizations and enterprises to get into the DevOps process automation, cloud automation adoption. And we are also into AI product development as well. I am part of HashiCorp Ambassador for past 3 years. I'm also part of other community builder program like AWS Community Builder for past 5 years. I have been a DevOps and cloud practitioner for more than 12 years and using HashiCorp tools for almost 8 years now, starting from Terraform in 2015. So at Cloud Engine Labs, we have developed a developer-focused DevOps platform called Axel SDLC also. So looking forward to sharing my knowledge about DevOps, platform engineering, and let's get started.
And this has been a long time coming because we've met on a few occasions, but we talked about this specifically at HashiConf last year. We met up, and it's been a long time coming, so we've got it all set up. And what's interesting about folks that we have a wide spectrum of different ambassadors, and I loved that you're in the startup space, because what people underestimate is like, how often do you set up a pipeline from scratch if you're a developer? Like, probably not that often, but here we've got a guy who sets up pipelines from scratch, assesses them, understands the concept of them, understands the craft of DevOps and the like, and you get a lot more practice if you're doing that regularly, thus you get a lot more knowledge. So I'm excited to see him on here. Now, when we got together and discussed this topic, you dropped a very interesting thing that as soon as you said, I was like, that is it. That's the hot take we want to talk about, right? And it was around our 3 favorite terms, CI/CD, DevOps, and platform engineering. Of course, if I say that, everyone's going to be like, those make me feel things. But what? Tell us about the summary of this topic for today.
Sure, Cole. So being a DevOps practitioner for more than 12 years, I have implemented this concept for a variety of organizations, right? So whatever I'm going to share today, it's purely on my real-time experience working with different clients, right? So the topic for today is evolving DevOps to drive the product value using platform engineering and internal developer platforms, right? So that's a topic we picked up, right? So it's actually a very interesting topic. So we get to see lots of product development companies coming up, and there are larger enterprise companies working out there, working on their missionary product to help out on end users, right? So in that aspect, if we see, every product development organization has to think about prioritizing their DevOps process automation from the beginning itself, right? So that is not an no optional thing; it is an essential one. Every product organization should think about, right? So that is first thing I wanted to call out, right? So basically, when it comes to DevOps process automation, I would like to take a step back on how it was evolved from the traditional product development to the modern days, right? So basically, if we think about that, think about the traditional product development, right? So traditionally it was like a waterfall development, if you can see, they think about that, it will be a larger development cycles, 3 months, 6 months. At the end of 6 months only, users get to see the product. But during that time, due to the lack of automation or a longer time development, right, they get to see lots of issues, right, whenever they are getting releasing the product. And in that scenario, what happens, right? So basically, traditionally teams are working in silos. Like there are development teams, there are operation teams managing the product, and development team developing the product. But they get to get into conflict whenever there is an issue, right? So that is when this DevOps process automation concept came, and it is trying to integrate all the teams basically, right? So it started as a it started with integrating development and operations team, but later we get to integrate a testing team. Nowadays it will be like SRE teams, and so many things are there, right? So basically, what DevOps process automation trying to make sure is like every people working for a product development or managing the product, right? They have to have a single product mentality. They need to align their goal towards the single product mentality. So that is when this DevOps process automation addresses the gap through the automation process, right? So basically, whenever there is a need for product development, so it has to be go in phases, right? So first there will be a requirement gathering phase, and a design phase, analysis phase will be there, and the product will be coming to the developer's plate for development. And once after the developer develops the product, basically what happens traditionally is like everything happens manually, right? So typically in traditional development, the release process goes from 1 week to months cycle for single product feature development, right? So that is when this DevOps process automation come into picture to address the gap through the automation, right? So that is the key concept of DevOps process automation. I'm kind of calling it out, right? And next evolution from the DevOps is like one of the key focus area in the DevOps process automation is like doing the continuous integration and continuous delivery or the deployment process. And nowadays it is also integrating with the continuous monitoring tools as well, right? SRE also coming into picture now. And there is also teams, they are also adapting the continuous testing as well. So DevOps process automation as a driving factor for any product development organization, and CI/CD sits in the very core system of DevOps process automation, and that helps the product development teams to automate their end-to-end software development lifecycle code. So that is how it started. Yeah, I'm taking a pause here. So yeah.
Yeah. So first up, it sounds like we kind of went right into the first topic, which works. I'm going to make you go back into it though. The summary of the entirety of the thing, kind of like, hopefully if you're listening, deriving from that, it was one of the things you said in the beginning was DevOps does not mean platform engineering is dead. Like that's become this sort of whole thing. Like they're two different things. One can't exist without the other. And when you brought it in, you were like, well, actually, they're an evolution. One exists on one end of the spectrum of our continuum, and on the other end of the spectrum, we have CI/CD, right? Which we just sort of got sort of an overview of that entire process, right? So when we put together the schedule and the agenda for everything here, what we sort of decided on was, first up was explaining this idea of that evolution, which we sort of got right there. And then after that, how do you actually implement it? And then finally, why? Like what's the big why around it? So I know we just sort of did that a little bit, but let's hop back into this sort of first thing, right? In terms of how does this begin, right? Let's start with a startup, and perhaps maybe it would be best to go from like startup to mid-sized company to enterprise, because this is often also the journey that we walk forward with the evolution CI/CD all the way up to platform engineering. So let's start with CI/CD, right? Let's start with CI/CD and the startups. Where do you typically find these startups and these teams when you first meet them, and like what are their problems and how does this relate to the evolution?
Yeah, so basically as a first idea we talked about, right? So basically like DevOps process automation as the CI/CD as the core area to be addressed, right? So basically CI/CD is the automation process for any product development company, right? So basically like in CI/CD what we will be doing is in CI/CD, we will be like doing the build automation as well as the deployment automation, right? So continuous integration process will be the build automation part, and continuous deployment will be the CD part, right? So wherein we will be doing the deployment of the particular application into the cloud or wherever they wanted to install, right? So at the core of CI/CD, what happens, right? So basically, we will be having a technology stack based template, right? For example, if you can take about an example of Java project, right? So Java will be having a like Maven build, and then it will be having a JUnit test cases to be run, and there will be a Sonar Cube code analysis, and then finally, as part of the CA process, it will be packaged using containerized package management, right? So that is the CA process here. And for any early stage startups or any enterprises, right? So that is how they have to think about prioritizing the continuous integration part whenever they start the development part, right? Because if they delay the process, right, what happens, right? So basically, without automation, there will be a release cycle will be longer, and their feature development will be delayed, right? So that is the key thing they need to consider for going into CI/CD from the beginning. So basically, for CI/CD, as I mentioned, templatization is the key factor, wherein we will be having a technology stack specific templates, and even if some company wanted to adapt monitoring as well, right? So they can also have the templatization for doing the monitoring as well, right? So these things will be driven by the tooling at the core layer of it. So basically, all this technology stack template will be integrating different set of tools like Jenkins, GitHub Actions, Sonar Cube, Docker image creation, and those kind of tooling will be stitched together in the templates, right? And so basically, that is the templatization that is actually driving the CI/CD. And in the continuous deployment part, it will be coming with the creating the infrastructure, in infrastructure as a code using Terraform or native tools like AWS CloudFormation or Azure ARM and all. So once after the CA process is completed, the code will be packaged and stored into containerization, container hub, Docker hub, or the container hub, container registry, and then from there the CD process will start. So the continuous delivery part will be spinned up by a. So basically, if the team wanted to have a infrastructure as a code setup for setting up their testing environment, they can integrate it as part of their CD process. And then once after the code is being packaged, it will be automatically creating and spinning up an infrastructure, and it will be deploying the code, right? And finally, whenever the developers developing the code, one important part is they will need to consider thinking about what are all the metrics they need to capture as part of their application, right? So for example, if it is a Java application, it will be a JVM thing, a garbage collection and all they need to monitor. So this is one example I'm taking up. Similarly, for each technology stack, there should be metrics, and these metrics should be configured in the application, and it will be integrated as part of the monitoring automation, right? So this is the core of doing the CI/CD, wherein we will be having technology stack specific templates, and that is actually driving the CI/CD process, right?
Nice.
So
nice. Yeah, that's I mean, and that's the likely in our conversations too. That's where you typically find startups somewhere in that spectrum. And I like how you split that up, how we have the CI process, it's taking the code, actually getting it ready to prepare for a runtime, right? And then the second, the deployment is actually taking the prepared code ready for a runtime, putting it on a runtime that is somewhere in your infrastructure that needs some sort of update. Eventually, you're probably going to have more than one app, so you're going to have multiple pipelines for those different apps, and that's where templatization comes in. So I like how your point here is, if this is all you're doing CI/CD, and technically this falls under the umbrella of DevOps, but you said a key word here, which was templatization for you. This next step, templatization, was it. So tell us about this piece of the evolution into what you started calling actual DevOps.
Yeah, sure, Carl. So basically, so if you want to move further on this concept expansion, right? So basically, I talked about the templatization of different technology stacks, right? So basically, like what happens traditionally, like when there is whenever there is a new feature development happens or a new feature development happening in the product development organization, right? What typically happen is developer should be reaching out to a DevOps engineer or through a support request or some process, right? To onboard their new feature or a newer application into the CI/CD automation, right? So there you can see one of the dependency on raising a request, DevOps engineer looking at the request, and again it is kind of having some lead time for getting the onboarding the application, right? That is when this templatization process will be helpful, okay? And that is the core for our next concept of doing the platform engineering, right? So basically, like platform engineering is driven by templates, right? So nowadays it can, I just wanted to call out nowadays platform engineering concept actually it's been in the rise for past 2 years. So nowadays, if you can see, there are platform engineering happening through tools like Jenkins and like the traditional CI/CD tech stack. And similar concept also applicable to the all the Kubernetes technology stack as well, because Kubernetes also having that concept of platform engineering, and it can be applied to both the worlds now, right? So basically, as I mentioned, templatization is the core for platform engineering, wherein we will be having the different technology stack templates stored in some place, right? And as I mentioned in the earlier concept, right? So basically, what happens traditionally or the way before platform engineering is like developer will be reaching out to DevOps engineer helping the developer to onboard their application, right? But with the concept of platform engineering,
So real quick, I have a question.
Yeah.
I have a question because I can see we're going into the platform engineering standpoint.
Yes.
There's like a line here where you would go into a company and you would say you have achieved platform engineering, right? There's a line where you would go in and say you're in the DevOps spectrum, like we would say that you're there. What is that line before? Because we're about to go into platform engineering, but where would you say if you've gotten this far? You're no longer just CI/CD one off. You've got DevOps in place, but you don't quite have a platform. Like, what is that line?
So basically, that line is basically if at all we have a larger development teams, and they have the CI/CD setup already been in place, but they are having a dependency on every time to for raising a request and getting that application into that automation, right?
Nice.
So that is when this concept can be introduced, right? But for smaller organizations, it is okay, right? Because they would be having a smaller development teams, and the meantime to wait for the DevOps engineer to onboard their application is fine. But for larger organizations or a organization who are developing very new features every week or every 2 weeks sprint, right? In that case, moving from the dependency of getting the CI/CD onboarded through a DevOps engineer might be a time-taking task. That is when we can introduce platform engineering for such kind of scenario. Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Perfect. That's actually the perfect line. You may have all the templates. You may have a way to deal with brand new templates that you need, but if we're at a point where you're still dealing with tickets and one-off, there's any type of manual work, quite not a platform. So take us into this last piece of the evolution. You've already kind of set us up for, you're not going to start seeing this until your company's probably bigger. That's when you're going to feel the need. Like, it'd be great to come right out of startup and have this in place, but the reality is you tend to see this once you get a little bit more mature. So tell us about this final phase of the evolution here.
Yeah, sure, Colin. So now we have that DevOps process automation in place, and CI/CD as a core driving factor for DevOps. And then we have the templatized technology stacks being stored by the teams like a DevOps engineer, right? And then we are now introducing the concept of platform engineering to the team, right? So basically, as part of platform engineering, what we will be doing is, so in platform engineering, basically what happens, as I mentioned, we will be storing the all the templatized automation template in one place, and we will educate the developer as part of the documentation or through any session, and we will help them on how to onboard their application through the templates, whatever we already created, right? So it's a kind of detailed documentation will be there, and in that documentation we'll be detailing out on how to onboard their application into the platform engineering, right? Basically, the key driving factor for getting the application onboarded into is the the branch, right, or the branch or the commit ID, whenever there is a trigger happens, it has to trigger, right? So basically, it is integrating their code base with the specific template, right? So those kind of documentation we will be preparing, and we will be sharing with the development team as a centralized repository, and we will also educate them, right? So that is the next step on evolution of platform engineering. We will be creating the templates and educating the developer to the how to onboard their application. And one of the next evolution from the platform engineering is introducing the concept called internal developer portals, right? So so you can see the evolution of it. So DevOps, process automation, CI/CD, templatization, platform engineering driven by templates, and the concept of IDP come into picture, right? Internal developer platform or a portal, wherein there will be a UI will be given to a user. Okay, in that UI, the developer can go themselves and onboard their application through the UI interface, by selecting the repository and selecting the required workflows, right? So that it will be eased up. In this case, they don't need to go to the documentation also. They can just do everything from the UI as well, right? So in the concept of IDP, there are a lot more can be done. There are so many tools currently available, right? One of the tool I wanted to call out is Backstage is one famous tool nowadays. Everybody is adopting. Yeah. So basically, in IDP, what happens? So basically, the developer can easily onboard the application. There are so many things like the gamification of the development team can happen. Basically, we can visualize the one particular developer, how many builds they did, how many builds are succeeded, and so for the developers, it will be onboarding their applications into the automation. And for top management stakeholders, this is basically about looking into the release cycle, right? So for one particular release, if it is scheduled, they can look into all the development process and testing process in one single dashboard. And all the IDP tool nowadays having plugins or integration with so many different CI/CD automation tools, right? So that is the one I wanted to call out.
Nice. So I mean that's the perfect sort of spectrum here. And if you're listening and you're wondering where you fall in it, if you're building down your app, great. You're on the spectrum. But it's not until you turn it into a continuous process, but from integration deployment, that you've hit CI/CD. And technically, this is all under the umbrella and the idea of DevOps, right? But when you start templatizing that, that's when you start actually taking the step into what Oraya sees as true DevOps. And the more you templatize and the more you deal with the creation of dynamic templates to deal with, who knows how many different types of applications, you're getting further down the spectrum, but you're probably still taking tickets. So with the platform engineering piece, when you stepped into that, is when you have a platform, right? You have a way to deal with this, and it's a little bit more automated. With the final maturity perspective, the final matured side of it, when you're at platform engineering, you've got a UI layer that can kind of consolidate all the information and allow self-service in that IDP type thing. Yeah. Which is going to beg the question of our next idea, which is how the heck do we do any of this, right? And I know the first thing that you wanted to talk about was, how do you assess it? How do you assess where you are? How do I know where I am? How do I know what's good and bad? I don't know what's really bad, right? So tell us, what do you do for a startup or a mid-size or enterprise when you come in and you're like, let's see where you are?
Sure, Kolya. Definitely we can get into that. So basically, we are moving to the next concept of how to, right? So basically, we first talked about the concept, and now we can see expand more on how to do this, right? So basically, all this automation stuff and everything, right? It is actually a top-down methodology, I would say, right? It has to come from the top-level management it has to be passed on to the subordinates to implement that, right? So as part of implementing this, right? So we will need to, in my experience, I have done that a lot, right? I have talked to so many enterprise stakeholders and make them convinced to do the automation, right? Because traditionally what happens, they will say, system is running fine, okay, don't touch it, right? Yeah, but we will have to make them understand what are the benefits they will be getting out of this automation, right? So that is when it is coming from as a mindset change, right? So the DevOps process automation and cloud adoption is a mindset change, that has to be propagated from the top management to the subordinates, right? So that the entire organization can get the better ROI through the automation. So it starts from there. So whenever if there is a need for some company to get into the automation, so we will talk to their stakeholders, and we will start our the process of implement going to the teams and talking to them. So as part of that, what we will be doing is we will be, for example, if there is a product development enterprise organization is there, they will be having hundreds of applications, right? In that case, we will not pick up the entire 100 applications. We will pick up the smaller sample of 2 or 3 applications first, and we will make them understand that we will first assess what are the gaps in those teams, right? And we will we will start with that basically. So that assessment process is the one wherein we will identify their automation maturity from the current state to the desired state where they wanted to achieve the automation, right? So from this is the starting point and this is the destination they wanted to go, right? So we need to understand what is the gap is there to understand where they are and where they wanted to go. And this assessment process is something it is like a kind of interview process, I would say, for we will be talking with the development leads and the scrum masters, developers, and everybody. We will understand their viewpoint on what is happening, right? As part of the assessment, one key area we will be assessing is what is the process of entire development process of from the requirement till the release. What is happening in the team from the each stage, how the team is kind of planning that task, how that task is being getting into the development, how it is getting analyzed, how the teams are developing, and what is the build process, and what are the technology stacks involved. And we will also understand about the applications priority. Those are all the things we will be understanding, and we will touch upon as part of the assessment. We will touch upon all the areas of how they are doing the testing, how they are doing the build process, how they are doing the code release, how they are deploying it, and what are the metrics they are monitoring, what are the infrastructure metrics, what are the application metrics. So these are all the aspects we will be assessing. And for the assessment, it will be a unique assessment for each organization. In my experience, I have seen, right? It will not be a same assessment, right? But anyway, for assessment, we have a set of questionnaire set. I can say it's a reference questionnaire set we have, and we will be just not to miss the very important part. Right? But the assessment is very unique. From the answers, we will be asking more questions from the teams, right? So that is how that assessment starts. Yeah. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. You want to summarize?
So question on that, and this will kind of lead us into the next sort of sub point of that idea. So it looks like, and this kind of calls back to some of the other things we've heard in previous episodes. You come in, you have 2 points, right? You have nothing's ready to new stuff's deployed and production ready. You go through every single point in that system, right? You go through every single bit, what every team is doing, what it all looks like, because you need to understand what your system currently looks like. And those then become the gaps. And then as you just said there, when you find gaps, you need to see how deep they go, right? Is that correct?
Yeah. So basically, I was just talking about starting the assessment. But so if I can move further on, what is happening after the assessment is basically we will actually sit with the teams and understand the parts, right? And as a DevOps architect or a consultant or a cloud architect or a consultant, right? So what we will be doing is we will be doing the gap analysis of what is missing in their automation journey, right? So as part of that analysis, we will come up with the derivation of where they are and where they wanted to go, right? So as part of the gap analysis, we will be coming up with the gaps in automation, right? For example, if I can take from my experience, right? One of the some companies if they are starting out new, right? If it is a traditional release process following teams, right? They will follow. They will not have in much of the source control tool itself, right? That is a major gap, I would say, right? So for any automation, doing the source control is the key part, right? So that is when that it will be the source of truth for any product development, right? So this is one of the major gap we will be seeing, right? So this is a kind of example I'm giving. So as part of our gap analysis, we will identify what are all the things they need to do adapt immediately, and what are all the things they can put in the roadmap, and we can do that later, right? So first thing is doing the assessment and finding the gaps, and next step is putting up a roadmap for implementation roadmap for addressing all the gaps, so that they can move from the source state to the destination maturity state, right? So that is how it should be. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have a question for you. So first up, it goes back to not all of these assessments are going to look the same. You have some defaults that you'll go in, right? And I'm sure there's some gaps you're used to seeing. But what are some of the interesting gaps that you've seen that perhaps, well, let's just stick with interesting, but maybe common ones that you see? Because the concept nowadays for a lot of modern developers hearing no versions, control systems in place is like, what? Really? Like, so that's one. I'm sure that at some point stopped shocking you though, right?
So some of the very common gaps we would see is there won't be any much of the test automation phase, right? And the teams are using the manual process for deployment. They will be using shell scripting.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So those are some of the very common thing, and some teams will not be having a proper release strategy for them, right? So for example, if I can take an example of one assessment result, right? So there should be a release roadmap the team should have. What is the first feature to be released, and what is the next feature to be released? And based on that, they will have to prioritize tasks and all, right? So in some teams, even they will not have that, right? So these are all some of the examples that is coming into my mind if you ask this.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point too, because that underlines that setting up these processes, getting yourself down the evolution, isn't all just about the automation scripts and stuff. It's also the people side of it, right?
Yeah.
If you come in and they have no methodology to how they're doing releases, that in and of itself can be chaos, even if you do have a version control system in place. But tell me more about the roadmap, because that seems to be the end product of this phase. You need a roadmap that says, okay, we've identified all the gaps. How are we going to take care of them, right? And you've already said, well, you need to prioritize them. But what does this roadmap look like, and why is the roadmap important?
Yeah. So as we mentioned, right, as we discussed, basically this roadmap is very important because that is when it helps the organization to achieve the better ROI, right? So because every organization investing in their product development, and at the end of the day, if it is not going to the end user on time, right? So that is actually they will lose some revenue, right, because of that delay process, right? So all this processes of doing that assessment and getting them onboarded into that automation is to achieve the faster time to market, and having the standardized release process defined, and basically through this process, whatever is getting developed as part of the development team, right? And it has to go through the entire process of SDLC, right? And so that they can have the code, whatever is getting developed, that should be the that should be released, right? So that is these are the things that teams can achieve through this assessment and the roadmap call.
Yeah. And so the roadmap, this kind of leads into the last part. If you come in and you make the assessment, you identify all the gaps, you still haven't necessarily gotten buy-in, right, to get it done, right? You obviously gotten enough buy-in because you began with that. You need to start top down so that you can actually go in and do the assessment. But the roadmap, I'm assuming, is also something that kind of bridges into our next point you'd use to take back and say, look, this is where we can be if we implement this, right? If we get the roadmap done, this is how quickly. So let's talk about that in terms of how you make the case. You've gone in, you've done the assessment, you have a roadmap of all the work that's to be done. You've probably taken that roadmap and prioritized the different gaps that need to be solved first. How do you go back to the top down, the top, management decision makers and say, okay, this is what we need to do. You should definitely get it done.
Yeah. So basically, like, we will be prioritizing based on the need, right? So so basically, like, once after the roadmap is ready, so next step is the implementation part. As I mentioned, we will be planning the implementation roadmap in different phases, right? So first phase, critical gaps, right?
Nice.
Like, as I mentioned, implement source control, right? So those are all something, right? So we will be going on phases, and as part of the implementation roadmap, right? If you tie in our first concept of CI/CD automation, right? That is when the role of the DevOps engineer, the developers, and everybody will be getting involved, right? So DevOps engineer will start developing their technology stack based templates, right? And if the teams are already having some CI/CD process, right? And as part of the roadmap, we would be understanding like what is a gap in that existing CI/CD process itself, right? So we will address those gaps as part of our next step, right? So we will start implementing the CI/CD, for implementing the CI/CD for the teams, and we will start implementing the templates for different technology stack. And if the team is willing to adapt to the platform engineering concept, we will also suggest that, right? All this concept ties in back to the automation for the faster time to market and releases for the code, right?
Nice. Nice.
That is a,
Go ahead. What'd you say?
no. So that's the next step we were talking about.
Okay. Yeah. So that's one side of it, right? Is like, okay, you see everything that we need to do. What do you do in the cases of where you may have top-down buy-in, but now you need to, I mean, you've already been working with the developers, the development teams, and everyone else to figure out the gaps. So they're already bought in some. But what do you do in cases where now we have to get the development teams onboarded to actually want to do the roadmap, to improve our process versus just releasing more features and pushing more things out the door?
Yeah. So sorry, what's the question? Sorry.
So you've gotten top-down's buy-in, right?
Yeah.
But obviously, and the developers and the development teams, sometimes those double as the decision maker, sometimes not. But either way, they then have to decide, am I going to invest time in the actual process of developing this platform, or am I going to develop the new features, right? And just use the old process. So what do you typically need to show them to get their buy-in as well, to say, look, this is why you should do it?
Yeah, so got it, Carl. So basically, like, what we will be showing, if they are having that kind of agreement, right? So basically, so traditionally, as I mentioned, if you don't have the automation, what happens, right? So the developer will be spending more time on resolving the issues, right? So basically, what happens? If we have the proper automation and the monitoring setup, everything, right? The monitoring dashboard itself will pinpoint where the issue is happening, right? And if as part of our build process, if one particular build is keep on failing, right? If we don't have the dashboard, we will have to go through the entire process of why that code is failing and those kind of things, right? So this is one key aspect of moving on to automation, wherein we can make the developer work only on the feature development rather than the firefighting and right? That is one key aspect, and we can also show them traditionally if without automation, if the release process is happening for weeks time, if it is taking 1 week or 3 days or 4 days, right? But through automation, we will address all the gaps and all the approvals happening on time, in the sense that entire release can happen in 2-3 hours, right? As you know, some of the matured organizations like Netflix and Amazon are having multiple deployments per day, right? Because they have a stronger automation process in their teams, and it is very adapted from the top down approach, right? So that is why they are having more more number of releases happening, right? And we need to make the stakeholders understand, for the developers to work only on the feature development, automation is key, and doing the build automation, deployment automation, and monitoring is very important. And we can also highlight them what are all the ROI they can achieve by having the automation, right? So, for example, if it is a critical feature on a payment gateway, right? If it is delaying for 3 days, there will be a huge number of loss for the if it is a fintech organization, right? So that is when we can show the that revenue advancement, right? So if it is happening in 2-3 hours, so that they can immediately release so many features in one day itself, right? So that is the kind of ROI we will be highlighting to the execs and the teams. Yeah.
No, that's such as a developer, as soon as you say like, well, you don't want to spend time firefighting, right? You do that, first of all, you're going to get bored and you're going to be up really late. Instead, spend time working on the stuff that's you want to, the neat stuff, the new steps. And then of course that carries all the way up the chain, because that payment gateway example was perfect. You actually do lose out on stuff if you cannot get these things done, and if you want to grow to the size of these bigger FANG companies and the like, you've got to have a process that lets you push things out multiple times per day. Now, there was one more thing here that's interesting when we come to the talk of evolution, and that is generally, it's not a DevOps talk unless we say containerization and orchestration of those containers. And you had some thoughts on that. So what were they? I'm not even gonna spoil them with the question. You go right into it.
Yeah. So thanks for highlighting that call. So basically, previously, I have close to 20 years of experience, and I have worked for different organizations earlier, and I'm into the entrepreneurial journey for 1.5 years, right? So I have seen both the worlds, enterprise organizations as well, and as part of my current portfolio, I have so many early stage startups and all, right? So I wanted to call out a very clear point, maybe that is very important for our discussion for today, I would say, right? For early stage startup, they would be having a very good product vision, and if they wanted to release products, right? As I mentioned in the beginning of the discussion, right? DevOps automation, process automation is the very key factor. They need to prioritize similar to their product development journey, right? Because if they delay that process, okay, their developers will be end up working on longer hours resolving the issues, right? So for anyone starting out new as a product development company or an early stage startup, please prioritize automation from the day one, right? So that is one important aspect I wanted to cover. The next one is coming to the point of packaging the code, right? So the packaging the code is very important, right? For example, if you are talking about a node-based deployment or Java-based deployment, so for Java we'll be having var files, and for Node it will be Node modules and all, right? So basically, whenever you are starting out on automation, right, for your product development, please prioritize to containerize your application, right? Because containerization is very important, right? Because whatever needs to be released as part of the development, right? That will be the code that is going to the UAT environment, beta environment, and production, right? If you are not following the containerized methodology, right? So basically, containerization is the one that helps to ships the code without any change, right? In the middle, no one can break that container and change the code in the middle, right? So that is very important. So please prioritize containerization as well from the beginning. That is my recommendation for all the early stage startup companies as well. And for larger organizations, if they haven't adapted containerization, they can start now, right? Because that is also one important aspect I wanted to cover. And one nowadays, if you can see, Kubernetes is very much in the rise now for past few years. And whenever there is a need for starting out on product development, don't prioritize Kubernetes from the day one itself, right? Because from my experience, as I can see, Kubernetes is for the scaling purpose, right? If you are starting out new on today, you don't need Kubernetes on day one, because that is the phase where you are developing the product. And you will not be having any real-time users, only your team is going and testing, right? But containerization is important, because once you containerize your application from the early stages, whenever there is a need for scaling later point in time, right? Whenever there is whenever your application is scaling with the more number of users and more number of infrastructure resources, right? During that time, definitely Kubernetes kind of implementation is important, but it is not really necessary to adapt Kubernetes from day one, because Kubernetes comes with its own complexities. For that, you need a dedicated team to maintain that, right? Because for early stage startups, you may not be having a bigger funding or bigger investment, right? So please start small with automation and then containerization, and prioritize Kubernetes only when there is a need. So in my experience, I will, whenever if some new founder is coming to me, I wanted to implement Kubernetes. First question I will ask is how many concurrent users your application is currently having. Okay, that is the first question I will throw them. If they are saying 5 users, 10 users, definitely I will say don't use Kubernetes, right? And Kubernetes is specifically for microservices, large scale enterprises, and if you are having more number of containers, right? And that is when you can go for Kubernetes. And if your application doesn't have any multiple microservices, right? It is okay to run them as a monolithic also. If you can have a monorepo for all your front and back end for the beginning stages, I'm telling, right? But later point in time, if you wanted to scale up, containerization is important, and Kubernetes can be taken up on the later point in time is my recommendation call. Yeah.
Okay. So obviously, we've both been in the space for a long time, and I guess stuff has changed since we both started. But I think that's a really cool idea to start with containerization as early as possible, because it is one of the few runtimes that actually, I hadn't really thought of it as a thing that lets you scale at any stage. Because if you're at the very early stage, you can just take the container, throw it up on Google Run, you can throw it up on Fargate, you can throw it up in any of these things that let you do one-offs. And like you said, you can't break it, right? You can't break the underlying deployment. Yes. And as you do need to scale up, this doesn't rule out, Kubernetes, it's something. You can go to it, don't worry. But you don't need to go to it right now. You need to spend the time that you would otherwise put in administration and fixing and maintenance and all the stuff around a large system like that on your actual product development, especially if you only have 5 to 10 users. So that's a really neat piece of advice, right? Which one, automation, get that in place as soon as possible so you can release faster. 2, get into containerization, that'll prepare you for scale. And 3, quit asking Saravanan about Kubernetes from day one, because he's going to tell you don't need it.
And and if I want to add one more point here, so basically prioritize on DevOps process automation from day one, containerize the application as you mentioned, and templatize your application technology stack for CI/CD automation. And for your developers, please prioritize on platform engineering and IDP, so to make their life easier. And IDPs nowadays also have dashboards for top management stakeholders to see their releases and all, right? So prioritize IDP is also one of the key aspect, right? And if you need any help, hire a DevOps consultant like us, and you can reach out to us anytime. We can happy to help on that. And in that line, we also developed a product called Accelerate CLC, right? It is also an internal developer platform for early stage startups, right? Using this, you can get into CI/CD automation on day one itself.
Nice. So we'll put those up in just a second. Going back, so this sort of brings us to the thing. First up, evolution. Figure out where you are. See, are you doing everything manual? And if so, we plotted out the journey. Obviously, you can rewind the video if you're watching and recording. Figure out where you might be. Once you've got that, a rough idea, the second thing we talked about was the assessment. Assess it. Figure it out. What are the gaps? Make a roadmap. Prioritize the roadmap so you can get it done. And then finally was, why? Well, ultimately, if you're a decision maker, a business owner, you're going to get faster time to market. And if you're a developer, you get to spend time working on stuff that you probably want to work on instead of fighting fires. And then the last part, which everyone probably needs to hear, which is, don't start with the most complicated thing first. How about you get your product out first, get your users happy, do the baseline. So we have some calls to action you would like to put up. You already said them, but I would like to highlight them on the stream here. The first one was the if you want to get started quickly. This was you told us about this at the beginning. Can you just one more time, just so we can of course clip it for the stream and stuff later, what this is?
Yeah. So this is the platform we have developed, right? So this is actually a product of our company, Cloud Engine Labs. So Accelerate CLC helps for early stage startups to get into CI/CD automation from day one, right? Nice. So the main key problem statement we are trying to resolve is the problem statement I was talking about, right? for any product development organization, they would be having very good vision and mission on solving an end user problem. For them, it shouldn't be like no, they should not get blocked by the lack of automation, right? That is when our product comes into picture, so that if they are having their code in GitHub, they can get into the like no CI/CD journey through this Accelerate platform from day one itself. So for that, anyway, like as part of day zero process, we will talk to them, understand their need, and we will load whatever the templates they wanted to utilize for their development teams, so that they can start using this platform from day one call. So this is the one I wanted to call out. And thanks for bringing it out. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean this is important because we've talked about a lot in here, and of course if you are a startup founder, a startup team, or even just a proof of concept team in a large organization, we want to see stuff quickly. So this is something that you can check out. And then we have one more thing. Obviously, if you want to reach out to our guest here, we do have his LinkedIn information, which we are streaming to LinkedIn, so you should be able to click on his speaker information.
And and I'm quite active on LinkedIn. Anytime, if anyone have any doubt on whatever the topic we discussed today, please post your questions in my the same thread, whatever we are running for this call, right? I have also pasted the shared this invitation in the LinkedIn, as well as you can also send a message to me as well.
Nice. So what do we, as we close out here, do you have any other last thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience?
So for the audience, anyway, thank you for being patient for all this time, and as part of anyone starting out on product development, please prioritize automation from day one. That's my takeaway. And platform engineering for developers' journey. That's it, Colin. Yeah.
Yeah. It's important. Yeah. All right. So that's going to bring us out to the end. Thank you so much for coming on today and walking us through the evolution. I mean, everyone, the whole topic of is platform engineering dead? It's like, no. It's just a different part of the same spectrum. A really neat idea. And I really appreciate you taking time to share it. And thanks to everyone who watched us live and anyone who's watching us in the future, since this will be recorded and put across all the platforms.
Yeah.
And you look like you have one more thing to say. Yeah.
Yeah, and Call, so I would like to take thank you for inviting me to this session. I'm very much happy to be part of this thought leader series, right? So because this is the one we discussed last year, and I'm happy that it happened now. And I'm also happy to be part of HashiCorp Ambassador Program, right? So it's a very unique program anyone can get into, and I'm very privileged to be part of one of the 150 plus ambassadors in the globe. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, thank you for doing all the stuff you do for us, which is why we, it's anyone can do it, but not everyone can get in because it takes, a special type of person. So we very much appreciate you. And for sure, you're doing us a favor by getting on here and talking about this. So it's wonderful. Yeah. So we'll have a few episodes in the future, so be sure to check them out. Be sure to check out check out the product here, Cloud Engine, and then also reach out to our guest and please bug him on my behalf. No, I'm kidding. Ask him good questions. And until then, thank you again for joining us, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.